How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. My flight got canceled. Today, I am continuing my playthrough of SeaBed, a eerie visual novel, which is what I play on Sundays. And I have given up trying to guess what is going on with this game. All I know is I am intrigued, and I want to see what happens next. So let's go ahead and hop right into where we were, which is Takako in some kind of a hospital. That's all I know for sure. I could see the light seeping out through the window pane of the white wooden door. I turned the silver handle on the door, and it opened with no resistance. As I removed my slippers and stepped on the tatami mat of the small living room, I heard a sound coming from the kitchen. Takako? Mayumi's voice reached me from the same place I'd heard the sound. Good evening. Good evening. You shouldn't barge into people's rooms without knocking. I'm sorry. The door was unlocked, so I thought you were expecting me. I try not to lock those in case of unexpected emergencies. I sat in front of the table as Mayuki appeared from the kitchen and placed a cup of steaming hot tea in front of me. Thanks. You are welcome. Mayuko straightened her back and gave me a faint smile. Oh, that's right. She trotted back to the kitchen and returned with a red can. It made a popping sound as she opened it up. Using the lid of the coaster, she placed the can on the table. It was filled with cookies shaped like tubes, ribbons, and hearts. Their colors made me assume they were coffee and cocoa flavored, though some also seemed to contain chocolate and sugar. In any case, they were a sight for sore eyes. They look delicious. I'm truly grateful for your help with the lights today. Please have some. Don't mind if I do. I picked up a tube-shaped cookie and put it into my mouth. There was something buttery and sweet inside. The taste made me involuntarily smile. If this is the kind of stuff I get, I'll happily change those lights for you every day. I took a gulp of tea. I'll be sure to ask you again when help is needed. After I gulped down another star-shaped cookie with some tea and heaved a relaxed sigh, I suddenly recalled my initial goal in coming here. Oh, that's right. Is there anything I have to do tomorrow? Yes. I would like to ask you to do some cleaning. Again? This is an awfully large building for so few people, so we need to clean it periodically, lest we find ourselves overwhelmed. I call that a pain in the neck. Please don't say that. What will you do? I'll be visiting the town. I almost jumped up. I'll be stuck here cleaning everyone's mess while you're out and about in the town? How is that fair? I'm not going there to have fun. Yesterday we harvested more vegetables than expected, so I'm visiting the town to try and barter for something more easily preservable. I'll help out with the cleaning if I make it back in time. Mayuko showed me her palm in a soothing gesture. Can't I go barter with them instead? I haven't driven a car in ages. I made a pretend gesture, acting like I was driving an invisible wheel. I cannot allow a patient outside without supervision. But if we go together, there will be no one to handle the cleaning. Are you guys short on funding or something? I raised both my hands, trying to emphasize the importance of hiring a new cleaning lady. This is a sanatorium. We try to keep our staff to a minimum. I've heard they had more people in the northern ward where they bred all those cows and chickens. I don't believe they're all that different from us. Mayuko's cool demeanor proved her to be impenetrable to my suggestions. Jeez, whatever. In that case, I'm gonna ask for that. It's been a while anyway. That? After trying one of each type of cookie, I picked up an extra large one with beads of sugar on top. I put it in my mouth, closed the lid of the can, then moved it to the side of the table. Yes, that feels good. Here? You could do it harder. Like this? I collapsed my upper half on the table as Mayuko let go of my shoulders. Your shoulders weren't stiff at all, Takako. It's only normal to get a massage after some strenuous physical labor. I stood up and pulled out the futon from the closet. I moved the table aside, placed the futon on the floor, and lay down on it. Massage. That's what she meant by that. Okay, try to do it a bit more gently this time around. I'm not sure if I can keep up with you for much longer. Letting out a sigh, Mayuko sat down on my back. How rude. Can you press here and here? I pointed out the rough location of the spots I wanted her to rub. Hey, massages are no joke. I didn't get that at all. I'll let you know if you start massaging a wrong spot. Mayuko exhaled yet another sigh and placed the area between my shoulder bones. A bit lower. A gust of wind rattled against the window. I could hear it whistle through the cracks. The shadows began to lightly twist and sway in the corner of the room I'd been staring at. I looked up to see that the light above was swinging on its cord. That's some pretty strong wind. It's probably some leftover sea breeze. We get strong winds near the end of autumn. After a while, it calms down a bit, and we end up with weaker but ultimately colder gusts. Sane told me the same thing earlier today. The window frame rumbled again. You talked to Sane? Yeah, we discussed the book she lent me. Then I told her about one of my trips. One of your trips? I'd love to hear about that myself. I don't feel like telling the whole thing all over again on the same day. Maybe some other time. Mayuko gave my shoulders a light yet reassuring knock of the fist. That's good. I see you've grown quite close to Sane. There are so few people here, it's always better to have more friends, no? Yeah. Thanks for that. Sane seems a lot more cheerful lately. Even her condition has improved. Really? Well, we found her in the library, didn't we? She used to never voluntarily leave her room regardless of the weather. And her facial expressions have grown richer. I'm pretty sure it's your influence. Well, if you keep talking to people, you eventually end up taking on their facial expressions too, I guess. Is that so? I mean, talking means conveying one's feelings, right? And to do that, gestures and expressions are sometimes even more important than the words themselves. Like, you know, body language and all that jazz. I suppose that makes sense. The wind seemed to have calmed down, making the room feel as though it was floating in a calm sea. By the way, did you know that the whites of human eyes serve to make eye contact easier? Maybe you've noticed that very few animals actually have them. In the animal kingdom, where survival of the fittest is the law of the land, having one's actions read from their appearance would be fatal. Meanwhile, all people need is a single look to convey their thoughts. If that continues to evolve, I wonder if words and facial expressions will become outdated as well. If that happened, things that convey emotion, like books, music, and pictures, might vanish alongside them. Sounds like an awfully dull world if you ask me. On the other hand, by understanding each other perfectly, we might be able to eliminate suffering. Religion and war might cease to exist. You could be right, but without books, Sane would be out of a job. Oh, that would certainly be unfortunate. Mayuko seemed to have fallen deep in thought. Hey, your hands stop moving. I want more massaging. More, I say. Mayuko gave me a patronizing okay as I decided to express my dissatisfaction in a childish manner. After enjoying the touch of her hands for a while, I suddenly thought of something. What is it? This is about what we discussed earlier, but doesn't Sane communicate with anyone else? Well, for starters, there aren't many people for her to talk to. In the past, we had a bit more patients, but most of them left us right before your admission. I see. There were multiple reasons why one would leave a sanatorium. Some of them might not have been exactly cheerful. But then, I don't really know everything about Sane either. I started working here after she was already a patient. Really? Yes. I'm not that different from you on that front. Well, if there's a difference, it's that I have access to the medical records. As Mayuko began to focus more on the conversation, her hands stopped. How bad is Samne's amnesia anyway? I doubt I'm allowed to discuss that without explicit permission from the person concerned. You shouldn't ask things like that so lightly. Does Takako have amnesia? Mayuko suddenly added more strength into her grip and squeezed my shoulder. I thought I may be of some help if I knew more. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with those groups where people share their problems with each other and that makes them feel better and stuff. I'm not saying it's bad to share that information, just that if you want to know about it, you should probably ask her directly. You can do that, can't you, Takako? We're getting along pretty well right now, so I probably won't. In that case, I don't see the problem. I could hear the sound of a swinging pendulum clock from somewhere. Speaking of which, have you already written your diary entry for today, Takako? I'd completely forgotten about it until she brought it up. Not really. It's one of your duties as a patient. I feel like I could totally start writing if I got rid of the stiffness in my waist. I kicked the futon with my feet a few times, making Mayuko exhale another sigh. My fingers are starting to hurt. Just a bit more. Just a bit, then. Mayuko shifted her position closer to my waist. Massages are really nice. I dashed forward through the corridor with my arms pressing the clean rag against the floor. The wet trail I left on the floor was easily discernible due to its darker, more vivid color. With some more force added, I managed to make a single swipe take care of most of the dirt. The smell of wet wood flooded my nostrils. It made me remember the time I had to clean the floor back in school. I read somewhere that the memory area of the human brain is sensitive to smell. Yeah, smell triggers memories better than any other sense. I didn't know how many times I smelled this odor when I was still in school, nor did I have any ideas as to the amount of cleaning I did. I most likely had experience with classrooms, corridors, toilets, the teacher's room, the roof of the principal's office, and the local train station. Cleaning the teacher's room was punishment for something I did, but long story short, I had become quite an expert at handling wet rags. The thought made me smile as I continued to go back and forth along the old floor, enjoying the smell of wet wood. Eventually, all of my trails connected, leaving not a speck of dirt in the corridor. The trail I made first had almost completely dried up. I used just the right amount of water, neither too little nor too much, and so the final result was nothing short of perfection, if I said so myself. Phew, sometimes I surprise even myself. With the second floor corridor done, I pulled out Mayuko's memo from my pocket. Let's see. I took out a pen from the same pocket, pressed the memo against the wall, and crossed out second floor corridor from the items listed on it. Next up would be... I spotted a window that could still use some cleaning. The window frame was covered in dust. I imagined Mayuko brushing her finger against the windowsill, showing off the dust collected on it with an angry expression on her face. The actual Mayuko, after having breakfast and stuffing the back of her car with a box of vegetables, left for town, promising to be back by noon. Might as well. I walked over to the bucket at the foot of the stairs. After all, I was the uncrowned champion of wet rags. Oh, look at that view. The somewhat chilly wind from the sea cooled off my body after it heated up from all that exercise. Leaning against the wooden frame of the window, I gazed up at the blue sky. Then I shifted my view toward the scenery of the port town. Then I inspected the entrance to our sanatorium. Then I spent a few moments gazing at the large tree next to the parking lot. Slacking off? The sheer abruptness of her voice nearly made me fall out of the window. I turned around and saw Sane standing in front of me. She seemed to have returned using the connecting corridor. I kept the door behind her open to keep the air circulating. I almost fell out and broke my legs, you know. If that happened, I would let you have my job. You mean taking care of the library? All you have to do is sit in place and read books. That doesn't sound too bad. Have you finished cleaning? I'm finished with this place at least. What about you? It's almost 12 o'clock, so I was on my way to have lunch. Wait, it's already noon? Sane pulled up the sleeve of her turtleneck and checked her wristwatch. It's going to be 12 in 15 minutes. If you haven't eaten yet, we could have lunch together. I wanted to grab something to eat, but after remembering the cleaning list, I changed my mind. Nah, I'm a little behind as it is, and Mayuko should be back soon enough. I want to clean at least one more room before she arrives. I see. We walked back to the stairs where I had left my bucket. I waved Sane goodbye as she descended. Once she was gone, I picked up my bucket and the rag. Gotta hurry this up. I continued to the next room to clean. According to this list, it was the furthest room on the west side of this corridor. I placed the bucket on the ground and tried turning the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Huh? Rustle, rustle. Did she forget to unlock it? It didn't seem like the lock or the handle was rusted. All the rooms that weren't in use were usually locked, and Mayuko was the only one who had the keys. I let the knob go and stood in front of the door, not knowing what to do. When I turned around, deciding to follow Sane to the dining room, I spotted the doorknob of the adjacent room. I stopped and returned to it. As I turned the knob, the door opened with a low creaking sound. Oh! I entered the room, slightly disappointed. I parted the curtains on the opposite end of the room. The afternoon sun peeked into the room, outlining its contours. The room itself was of the same design. It seemed to have been used to store old furniture. I could spot a big sofa, a ceramic vase, a wall clock, and a lamp, all ancient looking and covered in dust. Careful not to disturb anything too much, I swept my rag across the floor. The rag turned black from dirt, prompting me to chuck it into my bucket. After a bit of washing, though, I realized it ended up blackening the water as well. I wrung out the rag. My skin broke out in goosebumps as I pulled my hand out of the water. Even the temperature felt lower in this lonely room. A gust of air touched my wet hand, making me shiver. The dry, cold air stimulated my nostrils through the mask as I inhaled. I considered the door and the windows. I had both of them closed to prevent the air circulation from disturbing all the dust in the room. Feeling an odd discrepancy about the atmosphere in the room, I tensed up. I slowly looked around myself. The room hadn't changed. The old and discarded pieces of furniture remained still and silent around me. I checked the corners of the room, but I still couldn't shake the feeling of odd discomfort. As I slowly moved my head up and down, I realized I suddenly started hearing a sound. It sounded like a faint howling coming from the distance. I strained my ears, falling completely motionless. The mysterious sound reminded me of the soughing of the sea you could hear from seashells. It felt as though it came here from the opposite side of a long tunnel. I strained my ears again, hoping to maybe find a hole in the room somewhere. But this time I heard a different sound. It was a weak rumbling noise from beyond the window. It was coming from the direction of the road, growing louder and louder until I could hear the sounds of tires running over the dirt of our parking lot. Opening the window, I peeked out and saw a car parked down below. After a few moments, its doors opened and Mayuko stepped outside. "Welcome back!" Mayuko looked up at me. "Thanks. Aren't you a bit early?" "I might be. Could you come down and help me carry some of the bags?" "I thought you wanted me to clean your house." "I brought presents." I closed the window, and upon returning to the room, hung the rag on the edge of the bucket. What was it she was feeling? Putting my cleaning duties on hold for the time being, I left the room. What's the significance of that room? What's the significance of it? What's going to happen? "Sane, I brought something cool for you." I entered Sane's room and placed the wooden box atop the cabinet near the corner. As the waist-high glass-windowed cabinet had nothing else on top of it, the box felt almost like it was meant to be placed there. "What's that?" "A record player." Sane was a bit overwhelmed at first, but once she heard my words, the corners of her lips curled up in anticipation. The front of the black wooden box had a drawer with a glass cover, as well as two square-shaped holes above it. The holes were plugged with what looked like a coarse cloth. I unplugged and fixed them with a metal fitting. Then, sticking my hand behind the box, I found a cable and pulled it closer to myself. With cable in hand, I moved to my usual seat and bent over. I moved the cane chair out of the way with my free hand. I think it should be around here." And just as expected, there was an electrical socket behind the cane chair. I plugged the cable I still carried in my right hand into it. "Are you sure I can have it? It looks expensive." I stood up from under the shadow of the chair, brushing dust off my hands. "I found it abandoned in the storeroom. I already have permission from Mayuko, and besides, I'm going to be listening to this as well, so you don't need to think too much about it." I picked up the brown paper bag I left by the cabinet earlier. I opened up its glass doors and began lining up the records I pulled out from the paper bag. "I found the records alongside it, and there are some extras I found in the library later. I'll leave everything in your room, okay?" "Sure." Sane adjusted the glasses of her nose and gave the records a long, hard look from the distance. "Well then, let's see if this thing still works. Is there anything you want to listen to, Sane?" I inspected the records with my fingers as I finished lining them up. "I don't know much about music, so I'm okay with whatever you pick, Takako." "Okay then. In that case, let's..." I scanned through the records and picked out the one with the picture of an old blue Poiget on it. I took the record out of its case and placed it on the rotating turntable. I then raised the tone arm with my finger and slowly put it on the spinning record. After a brief noise, clear sound filled the room.
That's a nice song.
Seems to be working just fine. I picked up the Poiget record case. I don't think this is the right case, though. I wish Mayuko were more careful with these. Sane let out a small snicker as I began investigating the other cases.
It might not have been her. I haven't seen Mayuko use a record player before, so it's entirely possible it was some other person. There were more people here before you came.
Mayuko said the same thing. When you two put it like that, it almost sounds like it's my fault everyone left.
Not at all. Everyone's free to come and go as they please.
As they please, huh?
Well, I suppose that's not entirely true. The sanatorium is open for people with special memory disorders, but it's not like it offers any kind of treatment.
Memory disorders.
There's no clear treatment for what we have in any case. This is just a place for people who find it problematic to survive on the outside because of their symptoms. As such, once that reason is no longer applicable, everyone leaves. That's all there is to it.
For people who would find it problematic to survive on the outside.
Yes. The specific details of our conditions don't really matter beyond that.
She added an extra "at all" for emphasis. What about that whole reason no longer being applicable part? What happened here exactly?
For example, there was a person who couldn't do his job because of his fits. However, he eventually found a new occupation where he would work from home, which eliminated his reason for staying here.
I see. You won't cause anyone problems if the fit happens at home with no one else around. And you should be okay as long as you have your diary and memos. You can make do without being locked up in this place.
That's right. There were some people who discovered the frequency of their fits and after some planning, managed to return to their normal lives.
Now that I think about it, I haven't seen any of yours. When was the last time you had one? I realized I might have pried too deep, letting out an awkward, but there was no change in Sane's expression. She simply asked if I was okay. You don't need to tell me if you don't want to.
I don't really mind. Though in my case, it's been such a long time, I don't think I remember anymore.
Oh. I thought she was having trouble when I wasn't looking, but it seemed like that wasn't the case. But then how long are you still planning to be here? Sane considered the room's ceiling.
Good question. I suppose I don't have a significant reason to remain here. It's just that I've been here for so long that going outside seems like too much of a hassle at this point. There was a reason I originally came, but after spending enough time here, I overcame it. After getting so used to this place, I could no longer find a good reason for leaving.
You're only here because it's more convenient this way?
Yes.
After that, she fell completely silent. Well, I suppose this is a pretty relaxing place to be. There was little noise here, with no people around.
Why are you here, Takako?
Sane addressed me just as I was about to change the subject. It's because of that damn ringing in my ears. I don't think it's anything serious, but everyone around me got needlessly worked up. And before I knew it, I was here. That's all. They both have... Takako and Sachiko both have the same ringing in their ears.
I see. Are you feeling better now?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad to begin with. Sane made a complicated expression of relief mixing with slight disappointment.
So, you're planning to leave soon, Takako?
Nah, I've got no concrete plans yet.
I see.
Mayuko doesn't want me to leave her precious workforce go. Sane made a complicated face again, almost as though she didn't know what to say. A slightly unfitting background music was playing behind her. It made me feel somewhat gloomy. It was difficult to describe, much like her expression from before. Both of them have the ringing. I wonder what that means. Again, I can't even guess what's going on with this game anymore. We're just getting a few clues here and there. I tried dropping by the night duty room later that night, but Mayuko wasn't there. With the door locked and me unable to wait inside, I had no choice but to return to my own room and lay down on the bed. The cold sheets I pulled on robbed me of warmth. I stretched my legs as far as I could, ignoring the cold. After shifting to my back, I closed my eyes. It had been a while since I'd seen that weird pattern behind my eyelids. It would sometimes flicker like an old film reel, and there were letters spinning around in a spiral pattern. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was the alphabet. I wondered if it spelled out any sensitive words, but soon realized that the letters would deform and change shape once I began to focus on them, so I stopped looking. Okay, I think right here she's talking about like the Latin alphabet, you know, what you and I use instead of kanji or katakana or hiragana or whatever. All the conversations I had throughout the day raced through my mind. If only I had said this or that back then. As I began to ponder my conversation with Sane, I suddenly realized that she never really told me why she was originally sent here. I wondered what was wrong with her. Was it some kind of untreatable fits? She said that only people who couldn't live normally on the outside would be sent here. Then she got better after spending some time at the sanatorium. But she never left, realizing that life was more convenient in this place. Nowadays, she worked mornings in the library and spent the rest of the day reading, either there or in her own room. For an extreme bookworm like Sane, life at the sanatorium was perhaps more comfortable than in the outside world. I wonder if that could be true. I thought that this was a place for people to seek temporary solace from the hardship and fatigue of the real world. An environment completely isolated from the outside, where you'd relax and collect your thoughts for a while. Then once you rested up, you would think of a way to resolve your problems. However, no matter how I looked at Sane, she didn't seem to be particularly ill. Was she more suited for life in the sanatorium to begin with? Or did she only become that way after coming here? I remembered what she told me about how the whites of human eyes evolved. With them, you could indicate the direction of your gaze to your peers. In nature, it had the disadvantage of potentially revealing your escape route or target to others. However, in society, it had the benefit of helping communication. Sane loved books and lived her life completely immersed in them. However, being outside, she'd have to allocate some of that time to other things, and that was most likely a big drawback for her. In here, she could work at a library, which was obviously a huge bonus. I felt that something about this wasn't quite right. I began to think, what problem in the outside world could have driven her to come to this place? Yet my train of thought soon drifted toward comparing the outside world to the sanatorium, nature to society, and evolution itself. I decided to return to my initial point. Sane faced a certain problem outside. As a result, she ended up at the sanatorium. Here at the sanatorium, her problem was solved. She even preferred to live here now. If I had to draw a parallel with evolution, she was like a fish who used to live in the sea, but due to some problem, either a lack of food or too many predators, ended up evolving lungs to move to the surface. On the surface, there was plenty of food and few predators. As she spent her time on the surface, she developed arms and legs. Life there became even more convenient. I still felt like something was off about this. In this scenario, the fish left a poor environment for a richer one. The sanatorium, however, was an environment both smaller and poorer than the outside world. It reminded me of whales and dolphins that, despite having spent some time on the surface, always returned to the sea. Sane, unable to endure the rigorous competition that the otherwise plentiful and delicious food on land required, decided to return to the calm sea. Sane was like a fish. I imagined her sitting at the bottom of the sea, reading a book, and chuckled to myself. I wished I could tell her to come up and bask in the sun, at least once in a while. I could imagine her making a troubled face at that comment. She was looking at me. I felt a strong sense of deja vu. I suddenly heard a sound similar to what a phonograph would make as it reached the end of the record. All my thoughts were swept away in an instant. That was the sign of an ear-ringing fit. I fell completely motionless, trying to avoid causing any rustling. I took a deep breath so as not to panic. I could hear the sound of the air. Listening in, I slowly confirmed that no sounds seemed to be exaggerated. The ear-ringing didn't happen. Exhaling, I glanced at the clock on the side table. It was 1 a.m., roughly the time I thought it would be. I closed my eyes again. I pulled the already warm sheets up to my shoulders. I fixed the position of the pillow to make sure my head was at the same height it would be when I was standing straight. After a while, I saw that weird pattern again. I felt like I could see Sane in the form of a fish swimming through the darkness. Sleep wouldn't come just yet. Is she hallucinating? So she has some kind of a memory problem and possibly a hallucination? The heels of my shoes clicked against the stone pavement of the inner yard. Surrounded by the walls of the sanatorium from 3 sides, the center of the inner yard gave home to a small hill with a tall camphor tree growing in the middle. It was surrounded by a stone-paved road, beds of flowers, and benches. Tired from walking, I walked closer to the tree, hoping to take a break in the shade of its leaves. Said leaves helped little, though. They continued to shift, letting the sunlight through. However, light clouds began to gather in the sky instead.
Good morning. Hey, Mayuko. Good morning. What are you doing here? I'm taking care of the flowers.
She was stooping in front of the flower bed with a small shovel in hand. Looking up, I saw that most of the sky was already blanketed by clouds.
Clouds seem to be kind of assembling above us. You sure you're gonna be okay?
Mayuko looked up at the sky as well.
On the radio, they said it would be a clear day.
Indeed, according to the broadcast, the possibility of rain today was 0.
I listened to that as well, but I'm not sure if I could trust it with the sky being the way it is now.
Mayuko returned her gaze to me.
I think I should still be okay if I finish by lunch. Is there anything I can do to help? Are you sure? As long as you make me some tea afterwards. Sure.
Mayuko narrowed her eyes and smiled. I crouched in front of one of the flower beds and dug a hole in the soil, mimicking Mayuko. I took out the seedling from the pot she had with her, and sticking it in the hole covered its roots with dirt.
Here you go, Takako.
She handed me a pot with a small flower of purple, red, and white petals.
That's a cute one. How come it has multiple colors? Is that heartsease? It's called a primrose.
Mayuko answered me in a cheerful tone. She had about 20 seedlings with her. Those flowers were just as colorful as heartsease. Even in their randomly aligned pots, they still looked beautiful.
We're lucky to have that many flower beds.
Can I plant them in any order I want?
Yes, go ahead. Those can be group planted, so you're free to arrange them in any way you wish.
I'm good at this kind of thing. I'll make an art piece out of these things. Rolling up my sleeves, I inspected both the flowers and the flower beds.
Do you like flowers?
Yeah. Well, not enough to be a gardener or anything, but I like them.
What's your favorite flower?
Mayuko addressed me as she stirred the soil, adjusting the position of the red flower she planted. I like morning glories and tulips.
Did you used to grow them at school?
Yeah, the ones you grow are always the dearest to you, right?
Didn't the pots feel heavy when you had to bring them home before summer break?
They sure did. You were allowed to take them a week before the break, but everyone would always delay it to the last day.
I can imagine you were only bringing back your lunch bags and sportswear on the day of the closing ceremony.
I see you understand me well. I remembered how this one time I had to carry a huge pot in both hands with my sportswear bag attached to it with a knapsack hook. The anti-raven stick in the pot of morning glories blocked my view, and the sportswear bag soon got in the way of my feet. As I talked, I decided where I wanted to plant the flowers and tentatively placed them on the flower bed. As I began balancing them out, Mayuko glanced at my handiwork.
Ah, don't you feel the purple one would look better here?
You think so?
That's the feeling I get, at least. If possible, I'd like that side to have more red and pink.
Mayuko made several gestures to point out her preferred positions. I see. So you want to balance out the colors to an extent.
It would look more beautiful that way, wouldn't you agree?
Gotcha. Then how about this? I changed the positions of a few flowers according to her instructions.
That's good. I really like it.
Okay, then I'll go with this.
Thank you.
It was my first time seeing Mayuko be so into something. I lightly patted the soil to check if it was ready for planting. As I was lining up the red flowers the way Mayuko wanted them, something tiny moved into my field of view all of a sudden. Ah, a caterpillar! This was an out-of-season, yellowish-green caterpillar crawling along the flower bed. It was moving toward Mayuko's direction.
Where is it?
There!
It's a Ulysses butterfly. We can't let it wander around here.
Mayuko scooped up the caterpillar along with some of the soil, then lightly flung it toward the central tree. You're okay with bugs?
I like the butterflies.
Mayuko continued trimming the roots of the seedling as she addressed me. Is there anything you're scared of, Mayuko?
Well, there's a thing or two I'm afraid of, naturally.
And what would that be? She looked straight at me.
I'd rather not say.
Come on, it's not like you have anything to lose. I carefully pulled out the pink flower from the pot and placed it on the soil.
I can't help but feel like you'll end up using it in some prank against me if I told you.
I won't. How old do you think I am?
Anyway, let's finish this before it starts raining.
Mayuko pursed her lips, ignoring everything else I tried to say. I was busy clearing out the withered flowers and the old grass from another flower bed when I spotted a drop of water splashing against its reddish-brown bricks. As I gazed at that phenomenon, another drop of rain fell on my head. I could hear the light pattering of rain as it fell onto the tree leaves. Here comes the rain. Mayuko brushed her sweat off with her sleeve.
Takako, please go back ahead of me.
What are you planning to do?
I'll finish this row first.
Well, okay. I stood up, holding an empty pot and a bag of old grass, then hurried towards the door leading back into the building. I opened the door and left all the things I'd been carrying at the entrance. Then I continued down the hallway, its wooden floorboards creaking against each of my steps toward the night duty room. Whoosh. Returning to the inner yard, I found Mayuko still crouching in front of the flower bed despite the rain. I walked up to her and opened up the umbrella I found in the night duty to shield her from the downpour.
Thank you very much.
She looked up at me, still crouched.
A lot of people would be inconvenienced if you caught a cold. Does that include you, Takako?
Of course. Mayuko chuckled.
I'll prepare the bath as soon as I'm back.
The rain continued to beat down against the umbrella as well as the leaves of the camphor tree. That looks like a nice bath. The mosaic-styled floor of the bath that Mayuko had just cleaned sparkled in the light. On the other end of the room, I could see a bunch of yellow plastic bowls neatly arranged in the shape of a mountain. I sat down in front of the shower and turned its handle. The moment I did, the lonely bathroom hall was filled by the sound of running water. After spraying the hot water all over myself, I took extra care to wash off the dirt that got on my hands and under my fingernails. Once I was done with that, I continued to the bathtub. I hid underwater stairs. It had underwater stairs on both ends to make it easier to descend. The first step reached up to my knees. I stepped on it, sending a wave across the tub. Countless ripples disturbed the previously calm surface of the water. Ow, 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 ow. I had jumped up to my shoulders right away, sending some of the steaming water from the black bathtub splashing across the mosaic-style tiles surrounding it. I caught my basket before it could be swept away, then placed it on the edge of the bath. After that, I laid down on my back to rest my head against the same edge. The bath here sure is great. I heaved a relaxed breath. An upside-down shower head on the black wooden ceiling filled my vision. The lights below the shower head were on, perhaps due to the cloudy weather. As I gave it a closer look, I managed to make out orange filaments inside the otherwise white tube. Steam drifted lazily across the bathroom. It looked soft and strikingly white compared to its murky surroundings. My gaze wandered up the wooden wall, almost pitch black after many years of use, and settled on the windows above. The bottom ones seemed to have been made of wavy glass. I could hear the beat of rain against them. I heard the rattling of the bathroom door being slid open behind me. Turning around, I saw Mayuko with her front hidden behind a towel. I smiled as our eyes met. Cheers, Mayuko!
Hello again. How's the water?
Mayuko slowly descended the stone stairs. At the foot of the stairs, there was an odd lamp that reminded me of Western street lamps. As Mayuko passed by it, the light illuminated her milky white skin. Not bad. You should hurry up and come over here. Reaching one of the shower mirrors, Mayuko sat down on the wooden stool.
I have to wash off all this dirt first.
Mayuko picked up a basket from the neighboring stand and put it on her own. Then, lowering her towel to her knees, she reached out toward the shower handle. Be careful, that one's gonna be pretty hot. I tried to warn her, but she already turned the handle by the time I finished. Ah! She turned the water off almost immediately.
Why on earth is this so hot? Sorry, I used the same shower just now. Mayuko picked up the shower head, made it face toward her basket, and turned the handle again. She then fiddled with the blue and red knobs for a while, adjusting the temperature of the water.
I thought I'd be boiled alive.
She narrowed her eyes as she stuck her hand into the shower stream. I moved closer to her stand, sending waves across the bathtub. The hot water spilled forth onto the shiny tiles, turning into steam. After confirming the temperature with her palm, Mayuko began to wash herself. She first raised her head a little and sprayed some water on her chest, then leaned her head forward. She pulled her hair up with one hand, then sprayed water on her neck, letting it trickle down the length of her back.
Hey, want me to wash your back?
Mayuko slightly turned my way after I addressed her, but soon changed her mind and shifted her gaze back to the mirror.
I would appreciate it.
Oh, so I really can? After rising out of the bathtub, spraying water all around me, I brought a stool behind Mayuko and sat down on it.
I was joking, actually.
You can't go back on your word now. Mayuko turned around slightly and handed me her towel. After taking the towel in one hand, I proceeded to place a piece of soap on it.
I don't get many opportunities to have my back washed here, so I've always wanted to try it at least once.
Is that so?
It's my first time, so please be gentle.
Mayuko made a coquettish smile. Leave it to me. I smeared some of the soap on the towel and began washing her back. It was even wider than I thought, and it was moving slightly in sync with her breathing. I moved the soapy towel from her shoulders to her waist. How is it?
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Glad to hear it. I rested my head against the edge of the bath and considered the ceiling. There was no trace of any lights on it. However, there was an odd slanted line going across its center. It seemed like the ceiling consisted of 2 rows of planks, and that line was a chink between them. The light seeping in through it illuminated the room.
Hey, Mayuko,
how do you change those lights over there? I addressed Mayuko without changing my position. My voice echoed across the wide bathroom.
You could reach the fluorescent lamps there with a stepladder.
So those were fluorescent lamps too? That's boring.
What did you think they were?
I was hoping for something more romantic, like, say, a breeding ground of fireflies between those planks. Something like that.
Is that romantic? It sounds creepy to me.
Really?
It reminds me of bad horror movies.
What about luminous moss then?
It sounds pretty bad too.
Why?
I don't know. To me, it just feels kind of wrong to mix the artificial with something living.
Really? A cold drop of water fell on my eyelids, distracting me from the conversation. Narrowing my eyes, I noticed that the ceiling was covered with them. They were slowly moving across the planks, accumulating at their edges and dropping down once they'd grown big enough. Spotting one of them right above my head, I instinctively closed my eyes and turned my head sideways. Instead of the sensation of cold water splashing against my eyelids, I felt dull pain as I hit my temples against something hard.
What are you doing?
Nothing. I sat up, rubbing my aching head, and met Mayuko's worried gaze. It seemed like I hit my head against the faucet. It was located slightly above the rest of the bath's edge. Its constant stream of hot water served to keep the water in the bath fresh. There was a small plate of salt on it. Mayuko, is there something wrong with this bath? Mayuko gave me a puzzled look.
What do you mean?
Is it haunted or something?
No? What on earth gave you that idea? Mayuko seemed concerned. And then why is there salt here?
Just in case. I figured it wouldn't hurt to have some here.
I don't know. Salt reminds me of exorcisms and stuff. Why would you keep any here if there's no point to it?
It's for cleansing yourself.
Then leave it someplace where it's harder to spot.
Wouldn't that just make it creepier for those who end up finding it?
You have a point. Mayuko made an audible sniff as we left the bathroom. Drops of water dripped down onto the wooden floor.
Here you go.
I picked up 2 towels from a shelf and handed one to Mayuko. Mayuko wrapped herself in the towel, then pulled off a smaller one from the shelf and wrapped that around her head. I wiped myself dry with my own towel, walked to the long shelf that had the basket with my clothes in it, and began changing. I put on my underwear and was pulling my sweater over my head when... Achoo! Did you catch a cold or something? After managing to jam my head through my collar, I carefully pulled my hair through it. Once I'd finished changing, I glanced towards Mayuko and noticed she still only had a towel on, even as she was drying her hair. You should put on some clothes before you start getting cold.
All right.
After we both returned to the night duty room following our bath, Mayuko went off into the kitchen to prepare some tea. I was about to pull a seat cushion closer to myself to sit on when my eyes wandered to a vase on the windowsill. A branch of the comfort tree from the inner yard rested in it, with a yellowish-green caterpillar crawling along one of its leaves. You took it with you? There was a newspaper laid under the vase.
Yes. I thought it might drown in that rain.
I could hear Mayuko's voice from the kitchen. The caterpillar pointed its 2 antennae at me and turned completely motionless. I tried addressing the thing with a good for you, but it showed no reaction. Mayuko came into the room carrying a tray with a teapot and 2 teacups on it. Once she reached the table, she filled the cups with steaming tea and handed one to me. After taking a sip, I let out a brief sigh. Having a bath at noon is a wonderful thing.
I agree.
The hum of the rainfall filled the silence of the room. The sky was covered by a host of dark clouds, giving our surroundings an evening-like gloom. Mayuko snuffed her nose. She really is about to catch go, doesn't she? I took the thermometer from Mayuko's hands, who herself was laying in bed. The red line of the mercury-filled tube had decreased to 39 degrees Celsius. I shook the thermometer to cool it down, then put it back into its case. They say that doctors don't follow their own advice, but what about nurses? Mayuko slightly furrowed her brows in indignation, but ultimately said nothing. After cooling off the towel in the silver bowl and squeezing most of the water out of it, I placed it on the still protesting Mayuko's forehead. I bet you caught it on the day we planted those flowers. Mayuko avoided my eyes. She knows she's right. Your temperature's dropped a little. How do you feel?
Slightly better. At this rate, I'll be back on my feet by tomorrow.
Do try to get better as soon as possible. We can manage when it comes to a number of things, but neither Sane nor I know how to cook. Mayuko sounded a chuckle, her lips curling into a broad smile.
I'll cook something nice for you two tomorrow.
Well, you don't need to overdo it. I can handle making breakfast. There were 2 comfort tree branches in the porcelain vase resting on the windowsill. On one of their leaves sat a yellowish-green caterpillar. The whole site was illuminated by moonlight. Mayuko coughed a few times. Need some water?
Yes, please.
Her voice was barely audible, so she added a nod to reinforce her answer. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. I picked up Mayuko's teacup from the shelf and filled it up with tap water. Once I was done, I returned to Mayuko with cup in hand.
I'll lift you up. I can get up by myself. Hey, no need to be shy with me now.
I slid my arm beneath her back and slowly lifted her up.
Here you go.
I offered Mayuko the cup. She took it with both hands and began drinking in slow gulps. I could hear the gong of the wall clock striking the hour from the corridor.
I think I'll be going to bed soon. Okay.
I prevented Mayuko from getting up.
Hey, you need to lay still.
Thank you very much. I feel much better now.
Mayuko narrowed her eyes and smiled as she laid back down.
I picked up the towel that had since slipped down onto her chest, and after cooling it down in the water again, placed it back on her forehead. Afterwards, I grabbed her now empty teacup and walked over to the kitchen to fill it back up with water. Once I was done with that, I placed the cup next to her bed.
Thank you very much. Don't stay up too late, okay?
I moved toward the door and turned back one more time before leaving.
Good night.
Good night. Oh, wow. Here we go. Returning to my room, I could see my curtains flapping in the wind. I rushed inside to close the window as soon as I could. I looked down at the floor. I felt like parts of it had become more expressed in color, but I couldn't see well in the freshly turned on and still somewhat dim light. The rain seemed to have become even stronger. The room was suddenly enveloped in blinding light as I sat down on the bed. I could hear 3 intimidating rumbles in the distance. Another thread of light pierced the skies while I was looking outside, causing my room to momentarily light up. I spent a few more minutes watching the lightning and stood up. I carefully opened the door to the night duty room.
Takako? Oh, so you were awake.
After taking off my slippers, I stepped inside.
Yes, I was just looking outside.
The room suddenly lit up again. Mayuko closed her eyes, then opened them again.
Can I sleep here?
You might end up catching my cold.
Oh, it'll be fine, really. I've got good resistance against these things.
I opened up the closet, grabbed another futon, laid it down beside Mayuko, and promptly made myself comfortable on it. I noticed that Mayuko was still staring at me.
You're not sleeping?
It's hard to sleep with that thunderstorm still raging outside.
You won't get better if you don't sleep.
I know. Mayuko closed her eyes, smiling. I spent the entire day in bed, so I don't feel sleepy now.
Yeah, that tends to happen when you're sick.
I pulled up the sheet to cover my shoulders, still trembling from the cold. The thunderstorm appeared to have moved on to the other side of the mountain. Its booming echo could now only be heard in the distance. By the way, about that new notebook I gave you, are you writing entries every day?
Sure.
Okay then.
What should we talk about?
I don't think chatting will help you fall asleep. I replied after a short pause.
Then you talk and I'll listen.
But then I won't be able to fall asleep. Mayuko was overcome by a brief coughing fit. I decided to give in and do as she asked.
What do you want to hear?
Tell me about something you wrote down into your diary.
I'd rather tell you about one of my trips. You seemed curious when I mentioned I was reciting them to Sane.
I think I heard Mayuko inhale a breath, but it was too dark to confirm. That sounds nice. I'd definitely love to hear it, was what she said in the end. Hello, girls. Aww. Oh, no. Man, that's a little sad. Excuse me. Rustle, rustle. I opened my eyes to pitch darkness. For starters, I reached out to turn my alarm clock off, but my hand grasped only air.
We didn't bring it with us.
I heard Sachiko's voice. As some light finally entered the room, a wallpaper I wasn't familiar with appeared in front of my eyes. I let my hand drop and used my elbows to sit up. Sachiko, sitting in front of the dresser and looking at the map, gave me a glance and a warm smile.
Good morning.
Good morning. I somehow got out of bed and walked over to the shower room. When I returned, Sachiko had already finished dressing up and combing her hair. She also seemed to have turned on the radio in the meantime. Where's this? Oh, is this France? I feel like that's a French flag, but that's also an American flag. With nothing but a bath towel on me, I walked to the window and looked at the scenery outside. Patches of blue sky peeked out from between the thin layer of clouds. Hardly what one would call a bright day, but still good enough for sightseeing.
It will clear up past noon, though it might cloud over again in the evening.
I wish it was clear at night instead.
Around here, it rarely ever seems to rain during this season. Apparently, it's fog we should rather watch out for. What do you want to do for breakfast?
Sachiko, still in her chair, placed the comb on the table and turned to me. Through the window, I could see a cable car passing the intersection. People filled the streets, even this early in the morning. Men and women in suits, casually dressed couples, travelers pulling their carry-on bags. They were all hurrying along toward their respective destinations. That cafe looks interesting. The establishment I pointed at through the window had a number of people seated at their outdoor tables, reading the papers while enjoying breakfast.
What cafe?
Sachiko stood up, came closer, and peeked over my shoulder. That one!
Oh, I see. It does look nice.
Cable cars. The place had been painted in stylish-looking purple. They seemed to be running both a cafe and a bakery with all sorts of breads and tarts lined up in the showcase window. Hi! Good morning! A waitress handed us the menu as we sat down at one of the outdoor tables. I glanced at the other customers enjoying their meals around us. That and that. I pointed at the man reading a newspaper while drinking cappuccino and made a hand gesture of drinking from a cup. Then I pointed at the chicken sandwich at the table of an elderly woman and made a gesture of biting into something in my hands. May I have the same as that? Okay. The waitress nodded and gestured that she understood our request. She then turned to Sachiko.
Are you ready to order? Yes, I'll have a coffee set, please. All right.
The waitress moved into the building after taking our orders. As she walked, her curly hair bounced behind her like a large spring. I feel like I've seen that waitress somewhere before.
Really?
We kept looking at her back until the door leading into the cafe closed. Where are they? We walked shoulder to shoulder under the somewhat clearer sky. I stuffed the macaron I'd bought at the cafe in my mouth. Oh, is this Spain? There were several more colorful macarons under the transparent wrappings of the long rectangular pack I'd been carrying. Okay, Google, show me a picture of the French flag. That is the French flag in the picture, but like I said, immediately in front of that's the American flag, which makes me wonder if... Like, where are they? I don't know. I want to check out this slope. I took a peek at Sachiko's map and pointed at one of the pictures on it. In that case, we should make a turn here and take the longer way around. Yeah, and then we'll come out there, so... We continued onwards, alternating between looking at the map and the buildings around us. Hungry? Hungry? I stuck out a macaron pack to Sachiko. Not right now, I just ate one. I picked up the pink macaron and stuffed it into my mouth. As I continued up the slanted road, I kept glancing upward and to my sides. There were a bunch of plants under the red parasol set up next to the black iron fence at the entrance of a flower shop. Reddish gerbera and roses. Yellowish matricaria. White Casablanca lilies. All sort of colorful flowers adorned the establishment. Looking at flowers helps fill you with tender feelings, doesn't it? Or, did they remind you of something? The melody I hummed prompted Sachiko to smile and note how she was impressed that I knew the song. You knew it too. The buildings lining the streets we walked seemed to be an odd mix of general stores, cafes, and private apartments. It was hard to label it as either a residential or commercial area. It felt as though we'd been exposed to the backstage of a tourist destination. Yet, even in a place like this, the buildings boasted arched windows alongside lavish columns and buttresses. A cable car passed right past us, accompanied by a gust of wind. It rode up the slope, then continued downward, eventually disappearing from view. After we made a turn, we found ourselves climbing up a considerably steep slope. Are they in Seattle? I thought getting to the harbor would be a piece of cake, but the road's still full of slopes. My legs still hurt from all the walking I did yesterday. It didn't take long for my forehead to get all moist from sweat either. Most harbor towns are like this. Sachiko, on the other hand, seemed to be doing just fine. Not even her expression had changed. Let's check out the cable car first. I walked over to Sachiko and borrowed her map. All right, we should go that way. I pointed at the downward slope located on the other end of the street, then grabbed Sachiko by the arm. I thought you wanted to look around. My legs are tired. Let's just go at our own pace. Well, I don't mind either way. I descended the slope while pulling Sachiko after me. Wow! The cable car we saw earlier stopped at a lone slope surrounded by buildings on both sides. We could also make out the sea in the distance. A cool gust of wind swept at us from below, carrying the scent of waves. We spent some time gazing at the sea until a cable car suddenly popped up on the horizon. As the vehicle, nearing its stop, began to slow down, the driver hopped off with the agility of a street performer, hurried over to the nearby lever, and flipped it to make the cable car turn around. Only the rear end of the vehicle seemed to have individual seats, all isolated in small cubicles with windows. The front had no walls, only poles for standing passengers to hold onto. And instead of seats, there was a long bench splitting the car in two in the middle, allowing passengers to sit on both ends. The cable car's exterior was colored in dark green, with window frames kept in the natural color of wood. Its roof was brownish red, with some outdated-looking advertisements lining its walls on the inside. The driver climbed back into the car, and it finally finished turning around. That was the cue for everyone waiting at the stop to begin boarding as well. I stepped into the car first, and after turning around, pulled Sachiko inside as well. I continued to guide her to the rear end, and made her sit on one of the seats next to the window.
You're not going to sit?
She looked up at me from her seat.
Yeah, I want to enjoy the sights from a higher vantage point. Okay then.
Sachiko leaned against the backrest and let out a small sigh. Then, upon realizing I was still looking at her, she raised her face again. What? Oh, nothing. Suppressing my smile, I shifted my gaze to the scenery beyond the window. And so we continued toward the harbor, passing through cramped streets in the shadow of giant buildings surrounding us at every angle. I felt as though time itself had stopped in the dimly lit night duty room. I shifted my consciousness back from the memories and inhaled a light breath. I could hear rain outside. It was starting to grow louder, almost resembling our evening squalls. During times like that, I'd enjoy listening to all different sounds rain made as it fell on the leaves, the glass, or the roof. Mayuko seemed to have already fallen asleep. With no one left to listen to my story, I stopped talking, and after adjusting the height of my pillow a little, closed my eyes. Sleep claimed me soon after my vision went dark. I felt almost like I was being swallowed deep down into the earth. I could hear the wind whistle somewhere in the distance. I could have sworn I spotted tears around Mayuko's eyes, but by the time I could confirm it, my consciousness had already drifted into deep slumber. Wonder if there's any significance to that. Tears in her eyes? Snap! I woke up to the unnerving sound of something extremely tense and rough, like a piano string seemingly snapping in two. There was ringing in my ears. I could see the contours of a traditional Japanese room in my hazy vision. Most of it had been overtaken by darkness, almost giving me the impression I was deep underwater. The ringing suddenly grew worse, and my eyes misted over. I was sure that every monster known to man was lurking within that darkness, glaring at me with hungry eyes. Cold sweat covered my forehead. I slowly rose to my feet, careful not to make a sound, and continued to the kitchen. I found a cup and turned on the tap. The moment the water hit the sink, I almost sounded like standing next to a waterfall. I hurriedly stuck out my cup to block the stream. I took a sip of the ominously sloshing liquid. My eardrums nearly exploded at the sound of water passing through my throat, making me fall to my knee in surprise. I made myself focus on the cold sensation in my stomach for relief. I leaned against the stove and embraced my knees. Closing my eyes, I remembered that special trick a friend once taught me that would always help me fall asleep. I would imagine myself floating in the middle of an empty sea. However no hard I tried now, a raging storm would come to carry me away. I slightly opened my eyes and saw Mayuko sleeping in the night duty room. Reminding myself that I wasn't alone in the storm, I closed my eyes again. They have the exact same problem. You had another fit? Mayuko's voice rolled out like thunder. As I opened my eyes, I saw her rising from her futon and coming over to me. I closed my eyes again and responded by furrowing my eyebrows. I heard the rustle of clothes. Mayuko probably crouched down in front of me. Something touched my ears. Aw, poor girl. It felt as though there was an intense, raging gust of wind trying to escape my ear canals now that this warm sensation had blocked it. I could hear the sounds of pulsing blood, but it wasn't mine. As I began to focus on that sound alone, the others gradually faded out. Mayuko was covering my ears with both of her hands. The somewhat nostalgic sound of pulsing blood drowned out all other noises. I didn't mean to wake you. I'm sorry. I tried saying that, but with my sense of hearing going completely haywire, I wasn't sure whether my voice actually came out or not. Mayuko remained silent, keeping her warm hands on my ears. The warmth suddenly traveled slowly traveled to my frozen cheeks. I felt the storm drawing further away. The noise at my eardrums was gradually subsiding with every passing second. As my heart rate began to drop, I finally began calming down. The violent sounds drilling through my brain had finally died down. I touched Mayuko's hand, signaling that she could let go.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay now. Mayuko tilted her head to look at my face in the moonlight.
The area around your eyes seems reddish. Did you have a scary dream?
I closed my eyes, trying to recall what had happened right before that fit.
I think I did have a dream, but it wasn't scary. If anything, it made me feel warm and nice.
I couldn't recall exactly what the dream was about, though. And I didn't feel like trying too hard either, especially after that nightmarish ear-ringing fit I just had.
Will you be able to go back to sleep now?
I took a few moments to make sure everything around me sounded okay, then slowly nodded. On the other hand, with my mind finally clear, I couldn't help but wince at what all this implied.
Let's make sure to check your diary tomorrow and see if you haven't forgotten something again, okay?
Poor Takako. Tips again. Oh yeah, so I learned that even though this game is linear, there is the tips. It's kind of like side content. You can access it whenever you want. It's like a little side story sort of a thing. Completely optional. I might look into that after the game is over. We'll see. Maybe I'll just look into it at my own time. I don't think that I'm going to touch it at all until I'm done with the game. That's for sure. Chapter 2, The Hilltop Mansion. Well, the prologue lasted forever, but the first chapter only lasted for 2 streams. The Hilltop Mansion. The smell of a winter forest assailed my nostrils as the train car's doors slid open. The platform I stepped on seemed to be made of stone. A gust of cold, humid wind blew a bunch of dried leaves up the mountain. Rumble, rumble. The rusted train left the station, its sluggish movement reminding me of an old man with a cane. The station was silent enough for me to make out even the rustling of grass. Stepping inside the station, I spotted a sign with the station name spelled out on it. There was also a bluish plastic bench, its faded color the result of constant exposure to rainfall. Likely, no one had sat on that thing in months. I took a few steps forward on the uneven, stone-paved road with patches of grass sprouting from its cracks. My suitcase's wheel got stuck in one said crack. Realizing I wouldn't get far like this, I picked it up and continued carrying it in my arms. I could see a large oak tree in the front of the station. The station itself was a wooden building sporting wooden window frames with a bored, yawning station warden loitering around its vicinity. I began rummaging through the bag in my hand, looking for my magnetic ticket card. As I walked closer to the ticket machine, the warden finally noticed me. He was wearing a blue uniform, but his tie was crooked and he had no cap on. I soon spotted the cap hanging on the wall next to the desk he was sitting at. I finally found my wallet. Exiting the station, my gaze once again fell on the same oak tree from before. Upon closer inspection, I noticed it was somewhat slanted, hanging above the narrow road that only had space for a single car. Why is she dressed in the traditional... Is this Sachiko? Who is this? And why is she dressed like that? Speaking of which, there was an old-looking car parked at the side of it. And next to the car stood a long-haired woman in a kimono. Oh, it's this girl. Okay. She was fixing her hair, looking at her vague reflection in the car window. As I approached her, she spotted me and turned around. It's her.
Ms. Mizuno?
That's right. Long time no see.
It really has been a long time. You came to pick me up?
Of course I did. Oh, hey, just put your bag here. She opened the rear window of the car, her graceful movements in odd contrast to her somewhat crass manner of speech. Yeah, that's weird. If I saw someone in a business suit saying, "Hey, yo, pal, check it, come over here." Yeah, With my bag on the back seat and me sitting at the front, our car began climbing the mountain path. Nane was at the wheel. Seeing someone driving in a kimono was an odd sight, to say the least. Still, she had to stuff her long sleeves into her sash to take off her clogs. We slowly but surely ascended the mountain, following the twisting, chaotic road. Near the curve to our left, we saw a rusted guardrail and a round mirror on an orange pole. To our right stretched the vast mountain slope, illuminated by sunlight filtering through the multitude of naked branches, their leaves long since shed. Nane sounded a brief chuckle. Your fancy magnet train card won't work here.
Seems that way, yeah. I never even considered it.
So that's why it took you a while for you to get out of the station. You totally caught me off guard since I figured you'd be coming with the next train. I watched the patchy shadows of the foliage above dance upon the surface of the road. Apparently it had rained here recently. The few remaining drops of water sparkled on the leaves in the late afternoon sun. The car tilted a bit as its tires drove into one of the deeper puddles of the road with an audible splash. I held onto my seat, doing my best to maintain my balance. Better watch out! The roads around these parts can get tricky.
Noted.
The car seemed to have lost its seatbelt over the years, so I had no choice but to rely on the door handle to keep myself in place. The leather seat would change its shape with every jerk of the car. Though rough to the touch, the seat wasn't uncomfortable to sit on. It accepted my weight with just the right amount of resistance. The interior wasn't made of cheap resin sheet, but quality wood, most likely the only reason it hadn't completely fallen apart by now. I spotted an animal toy that looked like a cat with long ears, and a small bottle with aromatic dried flowers hanging from the front mirror. The car's interior had that certain vintage smell to it, with a hint of an orange-like fragrance lingering about it as well. The sea will come into view in just a sec on our left. Her words made me shift my gaze to the window. Oh, look at that. Through the leaves of shinkoppen trees and wild camellia bushes, I could make out a small port town as well as the sea further beyond it. As I admired the deep blue hue of the waves visible through the moving foliage, a high-pitched sound almost like a flute filled my ears out of nowhere.
Was that a green pigeon?
I fought with the handle for a while to roll down the stubborn window. The wind, carrying the salty scent of the sea, blew into my face. I brushed the hair off my face and listened in to the cries of winter birds as a cold wind caressed my skin. We managed to continue on the proper road for a while, but soon enough we were back to driving through a rough, mountainous path. If we'd continued that road, we would have ended up at the port. Nane began telling me how she participated in some hotel owner meeting in the town earlier today, and how she spent the rest of her time in the market district shopping for supplies. Apparently, she managed to find some unusually choice ingredients at a bargain price. In other words, I had dinner to look forward to. The trees became more scarce as we climbed higher up the mountain. There was almost nothing blocking my view of the port town anymore. From this angle, it looked like a split bowl opening to the sea. There were no tall structures in sight. The lack of obvious office buildings gave the land a sense of serenity and calmness. It really made me feel like I'd entered the countryside. I spotted an arch that indicated the entrance to a shopping district. Beyond it, small windows with red and blue roofs lined the road like a mosaic. As the road edged closer to the sea, even those buildings became scarcer. There were ships and boats of various sizes anchored on the other end of the big levee surrounding the town. Some were even sailing into the sea as I watched. I noticed a lot of poles embedded in the Bay Area a little further away from the city.
Are you building something there?
I think those are seaweed farms.
Oh.
I love seaweed.
How about you, Sachiko?
I don't mind it.
In that case, you should take some home with you. We've got plenty. We're almost there.
As we cleared another curve with lush and blooming red camellia bushes, I suddenly felt as though I saw a thin line connecting the mountain and the port town.
Can you see the gondola cable? I had to bring lots of stuff with me today, so I used the car, but it's usually a lot faster to just use that to get to the town. My place is just a little further away from the station.
I spotted a brown roof between the slanted white trunks of the trees and the reddening evening sky. The car took another turn at a three-way junction. Upon asking what there was on the opposite side, I learned that there was a small mountain village nearby. I heard the cry of a green pigeon again. A green pigeon, is that a real thing? Okay, Google, show me pictures of a green pigeon.
Oh, it's beautiful. That looks beautiful.
It's not green, it's like a yellow-green body, and it's neck and up. It's like a lavender color. It's beautiful. We passed by a hedge fence with several yellow flowers growing on it before finally reaching the actual inn. The actual building was colored in dull brown and looked like it could melt into a snow-laden winter forest behind it at any moment.
Is this the exact same exterior as Takako's?
This is the exact same exterior as Takako's sanatorium. It's not the same building, is it? Windows with wooden frames lined the flat brick wall. Most of them were covered in ivy curtains from the other side. The tires made low, crackling sounds as they drove over the gravel driveway. The car jerked a few times as Nane slowed down to align the vehicle to the parking spot. After a few more adjustments, we finally came to a complete halt.
We're here!
I stepped out of the car, feeling slightly wobbly after all that shaking, but the invigorating scent of flowers pulled me back to reality. I followed Nane along the gravel road, which was covered almost completely in golden flower petals. Impressed by how her sash didn't seem to come undone after all that shaking, I glanced over her shoulders to inspect the inn. One side of the building was rounded and rose toward the sky like a tower, its lattice windows only adding to the image. It also had a pointy roof that reminded me of a witch's hat. From it extended a triangular roof with a few windows that covered the middle of the building. The rest of the roof was with a flat fence for its parapet. Tall trees behind the building extended above its roof, their colored leaves rustling in the wind. The semicircular side of the building went out of view as I ascended the fan-shaped stone stairs at the entrance. The double doors had 3 triangles carved at their bottom and a window at the top. Above the windows, there was a rectangular patch of stained glass. Nane picked up my bag with one hand, while turning the metal handle with the other. She pushed the door half open with her shoulder, then turned back toward me.
Welcome, dear guest.
No, this is a straight-up hotel. Got it.
Wait here for a bit.
Nane swiftly disappeared into the room beyond the lobby desk. The room fell into complete silence with her gone. The sun had almost completely set, yet the lights in the lobby were still off. The only thing to illuminate the floor was a rectangular patch of colorful light that filtered in through the stained glass. For a while, I kept staring absent-mindedly at the lobby desk. Its black wood surface was surprisingly cold to the touch. Beyond the desk, I could see a fancy-looking cabinet with arched cat-like legs. Up on the shelves, I also spotted some old, foreign-looking postcards, an artificial flower, and some early Christmas decorations, among other things. A transparent vase rested on the lobby desk with a camellia branch placed next to it. Next to it was a silver mechanical register decorated with vines. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Nane appeared in the doorway holding a green journal. Oh, it's working just fine. Don't worry. Realizing I was looking at the register, she pushed one of its buttons, causing the lower half to open up with a lively ka-ching. There were a few bills and some coins inside. We don't really use it much, though. Nane closed it with another ka-ching. She then placed the journal on the lobby desk. I want you to sign your name here. Yes, here. Then here. And here. After pointing out 3 places on the paper with her fountain pen, Nane popped its cap off and handed it to me. I signed my name 3 times. Ding dong. The grandfather clock that towered near the far wall of the lobby had just struck the hour. The clock's hands signaled that it was 5 o'clock. I'll show you to your room. Nane stashed the journal under the desk, then circled around it. I was about to nod when the camellia branch trembled in the vase, almost as if to answer in my stead. We ascended the semicircular stairs and took a right turn on the second-floor corridor. The floors creaked under my steps. Windows lined the wall on my right. Looking out one of them, I could see the inner yard of its stone-paved path through a crown of leaves. To my left, I noticed several doors, all of which bore the same designs as the one at the entrance. We turned the corner at the L-shaped corridor when Nane finally stopped. This is your room. Ooh, look at that. She turned the key in the lock, opening the door. Upon entering the room, she left my bag by the side of the bed. I walked to the other end of the room and glanced outside through a large window. Its elegant lace curtains swayed in the light breeze. It gave me a view of both the port town and the sea. This looks old school, like I've seen Western rooms that look like this that are like from the like early 20th century. This definitely looks like it belongs from like 100 years ago. See that cabinet over there closest to the far wall? You see how the drawers curve inside with the form of the dresser? That is definitely old furniture. I like it. I'll leave your key here. Nane placed the key, attached to a rectangular amber-colored and semi-transparent key holder, on the nightstand next to the bed. Anyway, I'll get back to work now. You're free to go anywhere you want inside the inn. We also periodically check the windows, bathrooms, and so on, but as you can see, most of our equipment is pretty old, so don't hesitate to inform us if you find that lights don't work somewhere. I will. Thank you. I'd love to talk to you some more, so what would you say to having dinner tonight together? And when will that be? How about in an hour or so? Sounds good to me. Cool. I'll come pick you up in an hour then. Okay. Nane moved to the door and left the room after making a curt bow. After glancing out the window one more time, I sat down on the bed. It had a vine-like canopy that seemed to be carved out of wood. I took off my shoes and stretched my legs. After I was done with that, I joined my fingers and stretched my arms next. You had to step down from the sill to reach the floor, which was at a slightly lower level than the door itself. The interior furniture was an old Western design. The green one-seater Victorian sofa had a acanthus leaf design carved into its leg. The color of the sofa's mahogany armrests had faded over time and looked almost black at certain points. That said, its springs seemed to be in perfect condition, and with the tall backrest, the whole thing was a pleasure to sit on. I spotted a small chest on the cabinet that had the carving of a lion on its side. An ivy plant was positioned on top of it, covering its upper half with vines. That is a very pretty hotel room. I like that a lot. Going for a certain aesthetic, of course. The white porcelain cup made an elegant clang as I put it back down on the saucer.
Oh, that's right. I remember that year. I came back and found the entire place covered in heaps of snow. Hardly something I'd forget considering how little it snows around these parts. Time sure flies, doesn't it?
That was how Nane replied when I brought up the year we met.
Thank you for showing me around at the time. Who knows where I'd ended up without your help.
Oh, don't sweat it. Looks very different without her kimono, huh? Nane made a mischievous smile. The black wood table in the middle of the dining room had engravings of ivies and cosmos flowers on its sides. It was supported by spindle legs whose shape reminded me of a few dewdrops. So, do you like it?
Like what?
Our mansion.
Yes, it is quite something.
I'm glad it didn't disappoint.
I expected a smaller place since you told me you managed it alone.
I'm not really doing it alone. My auntie's also here. And during peak seasons, we hire part-timers from the town to help out. Unfortunately, we don't have a hot spring on the premises, so there aren't that many customers around this time of the year. She let out a sigh.
I see. That explains why you have time to have dinner with me.
That's the long and short of it, yeah. Cheerfulness returned to Nane's features. A gust of wind suddenly swept through the room, making the candle lights between Nane and myself flicker.
Do you always use candles for lighting here?
No, these are for special occasions. Don't you find it romantic? There was a dark window on the wall behind Nane. Upon giving it a closer look, I spotted the shadows of tree leaves fluttering in the darkness, like wavelets in the night sea. With the table taking up almost the entire space of the relatively narrow candlelit dining room, I felt almost like I was in the cabin of some western ship.
It's like we're sailing in a ship.
If that's the case, I hope it's a merchant vessel.
Why?
It costs a fortune to transport all this furniture from overseas.
I see. Have you acquired anything new lately?
A few things as usual.
Our ship's not departing tonight?
We're resupplying on water and foodstuffs right now.
And once that's done?
Well, the wind looks favorable and there's not a single cloud in the sky. We could sail at any time if that is your wish. Nane let out a hearty sailor-like guffaw. Are you always like that? Nane asked after we both calmed down.
No way. Takako was always like that, though, I added.
Sounds like a fun person to be around. Shame I didn't get to meet her.
I bet you two would have hit it off.
Nane made an amiable smile again. She seemed to possess an entire repertoire of smiles and knew how to use them. As a result, I ended up revealing more than I originally intended. I shut my mouth and shifted my gaze to the window behind her. That's a map of the world on the far wall. I see that. Beyond the huge shadow of the mountain, bright stars decorated the night sky. It really was a huge mansion. I couldn't imagine how Nane, who was more or less my age, ended up owning such a place.
You said your aunt was also working here, but what about your parents?
I don't have any. My mother passed away when I was little, and as far as I know, my father ran away before I was even born. Nane said it as though it was nothing.
I see.
Nane made another smile, perfectly attuned to the situation. It didn't seem like she was bothered, so it would have been odd for me to apologize. Not knowing what to do, I shifted my attention to the food. Oh, baby. Steam billowed forth from the boiled radish as I used my chopsticks to slice one. I put it in my mouth, tasting its warmth.
You prepared quite a feast today.
I could smell the mouth-watering, salty sea aroma of a well-seasoned meat and potato stew. Among the many plates on the table besides the radish, there was also one for sea bream sashimi with shiso leaves. I picked up an oyster from another plate and put it in my mouth, feeling its gentle sweetness spread across my tongue. Takako was not a fan of the taste and would always move oysters to my plate. Don't be shy to speak up if there's anything you don't like, and you don't need to eat everything. I'll be happy to finish your leftovers.
I'm not particularly picky about my food. Thank you.
I felt the slippery texture of the oyster in my mouth. A mellow sweetness enveloped my tongue as I bit through the flesh. I've never had oyster. Is it good? The fact Takako disliked this was still baffling to me. I let my gaze settle on the flickering candle lights up in the gently swaying chandelier as I reminisced. The two candle holders lined up on the table below seemed to be designed in a fashion similar to the chandelier. I recalled seeing an almost identical chandelier in the lobby room, too. Gentle orange light illuminated the room.
Did you find any good furniture that day?
Nane looked up from her food, momentarily ceasing her attempts to separate a portion of the fish from the stubborn bone, using only her chopsticks. Yeah, I got really lucky that day. I managed to find a mahogany sofa and a writing desk with glass doors. That sofa is actually the one in your room. I recalled the green Victorian sofa I saw in my room.
You have good taste.
Thanks. From the other end of the table, I could see Nane flash another smile. I heard the brief rattling of the windows. The wind must have picked up a bit. It's just seasonal wind, said Nane. I shifted my gaze to the window. In these parts, the wind gets stronger around the same time each year. Don't worry, though, it won't blow the entire building over or anything.
I'm glad to hear that.
Nane, after sipping out all the soup left in her spoon, stuck it in my direction for me to inspect. Good thing about antiques is that they can stand the test of time. Look at this spoon, for example. It's been around for half a century, and with enough care and maintenance, will stay in tip-top shape for another 50 years. No problem. Nane showed me the other side of the spoon by rotating it in her grip. In the past, these things weren't as common and expendable as they are today, so every article was made with care by an actual master of the craft, rather than machines.
I see.
I felt as though I heard someone knocking on the wall. That's also the wind. I wonder if I left one of the windows open. Another gust clashed against the window behind Nane. Soon after, I heard the knocking sound again from the direction of the corridor. Did you think it was a ghost?
I don't believe in things like that.
I see. I am full. Nane placed her plate back on the table. There were a few more plates on Nane's side as we finished eating. You really ate it all.
This is nothing. If anything, I'm still a bit hungry.
Looking after an inn requires quite a bit of physical work, you know. Besides, this is dinner. We heard the same knocking sound from the corridor. Want to go look around the area tomorrow? I could show you around. Nane pushed her chair back and leaned forward against the table.
Are you sure I wouldn't be imposing on you too much?
Of course not. I want to do it myself.
In that case, I'll take you up on the offer.
All right, you just leave everything to me. I'll show you around all the best places. And that's the perfect stopping point. Hopping back and forth between Sachi and Takako. save right there. Pale Morning. So that was day 5 of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. I feel like we actually did get a few answers, but also a few more questions. This was a very interesting episode. I'll be back next Sunday to continue. As a note, no one's here watching this live, but whatever. Starting on Tuesday, we're actually going to be shifting our schedule. I'll be streaming every single day or every single time I stream anyway. Sundays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. Up until now has been starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Beginning Tuesday and every stream after that, it'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'll be back next Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 hours before the current time. So yeah, that does it for now. Shout out to the lurkers. Shout out to everyone watching us on YouTube after the fact. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.